Hi, I'm Bill Donohue, President of the Catholic League. Joining me today is Nick Palczewski. He's been a good guy. He's been with us for a number of years as a policy analyst. And today we're going to talk about a very important subject dealing with clergy sexual abuse. I want to talk about this report that the bishops have put out, the USCCB, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. They use Stonebridge business partners, the CARE group over at Georgetown, and other studies of their own to come up with this data. They looked at all the cases that they received over a year, beginning in July the 1st of 2024 to June the 30th of 2025. During that year, there are over 1,000 allegations that were made against members of the clergy. However, that goes back to 1950. All right? Now, quite frankly, they can't substantiate most of these cases. It's very hard to do. The good news is this. Virtually all of the bad guys who were, in fact, involved in anything, they're either dead or they were kicked out of the priesthood. There's nobody in active ministry today. When you go back to those times, who's still there in the Catholic Church serving. They've dealt with those people. What was the timeline? Between mid-60s and the mid-80s. We've known this consistently for a long time. It was the heyday of the sexual revolution between the mid-60s and the mid-80s. That's when this stuff took place. So that's pretty much what they found out in terms of looking at it going back to 1950.
Mm-hmm. Bill, can you tell us who these people were? What can kind of give us sort of a profile of who they were?
Yeah, I mean, again, the media are reluctant, and so are the people in the Catholic Church to mention this. If you take a look at the data, they don't mention it specifically. If you take a look at the data, almost all of the abuse was done by homosexuals. Well over 80% of the victims are male and they're post-pubescent. In other words, we never had a pedophilia crisis in the Catholic Church. That's simply a lie. It's not an opinion, people. Okay, the evidence is there. Almost all of this was homosexual priests hitting on adolescent, post-pubescent males, and that needs to be addressed because otherwise we're not going to get any progress. You know, if you have an ailment, you go to see a doctor, he's not going to be able to give you a good diagnosis unless you get the right remedy, unless he has the right diagnosis. The right remedy is dependent on the right diagnosis, and I do think that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. What about the most recent cases in the most recent year? How do they compare to the ones back in the 60s and the 80s?
Well, if you take a look at, again, going from July the 1st of 2024 to June the 30th of 2025, there were 24 cases that have been reported to the Catholic Church of alleged abuse. Of that number, four of them were substantiated. Now, if you do the math, we did it here, 0.008% of the clergy in this country had a substantiated case of abuse made against them for sexually abusing a minor. One is too many. But the fact of the matter is, I've written a book on this subject, The Truth About Clergy Sexual Abuse, and I can tell you, looking at other institutions, secular as well as religious, where you have adults regularly interacting with minors, unfortunately, in any religion, you see it in camps, you certainly see it in the public school, you're going to have a problem with this. And all I'm saying that there's no institution in America today, secular or religious, which has less of a problem with this problem than the Catholic Church does today. We don't get enough credit for that.
Mm-hmm. And Bill, lastly, do you have any suggestions for the persons that handle these audits, and what would you recommend to them?
I think the one thing they can do is that they need to step up talking about information about what goes on with the priests who have had an unsubstantiated accusation made against them. You know, priests have rights, and that has not been emphasized. It doesn't take a whole lot of courage to stand up for the victim because our heart goes out to those people if they truly have been abused. But there are priests who have had their reputations sullied, ruined, because of false allegations. And I do think this is not a zero-sum game, people. You can certainly stand up for the rights of victims without compromising the rights of priests. So I would suggest that they don't treat priests like a second-class status the way they have been, and start stepping up and recognizing that they have due process rights. So do the rights of the victims. They must be served very well. So I think that we can do both, and I hope that that will, in fact, be the case. Thank you.